Hello, YouTubers. Dave Soriano out in Western Pennsylvania. I'm a soon-to-be retired chemistry professor, and I upload videos on my particular studies of supercapacitor prototypes. And what I have here is a far cry from that. I also do, I'm a self-trained artist. I do artwork for entertainment, relaxation. I'm reading a book right now which brought up a very interesting point. So this short presentation is titled Nikola Tesla, the famous electrical engineer, inventor, and I may add eccentric, and the Pentecost. Is there evidence of plasma bodies? So we'll go to the next slide. And for your entertainment, there's a little bit of some artwork I did on the subject. This is what came to mind. But let's get to my point. Now, author Robert Temple, I'm reading his book right now, A New Science of Heaven. And you can see the ISBN. The book came out in 2023. Coronet Publishing in the United Kingdom. And in this book, which deals with plasma, plasmoids, so-called plasma bodies, the author describes Nikola Tesla's personal experiences with what the inventor called tongues of living flame. This caused me to pause and reflect on the New Testament's Acts of the Apostles, where the Christian Pentecost is described. Now, while both Nikola Tesla and the biblical account of Pentecost, they describe a phenomena involving tongues of fire or living flame, the context, nature, and perceived source of these experiences are, according to AI's Gemini, which I approached with this question, vastly different, suggesting there is no direct connection between the two, namely the accounts in the Acts of the Apostles and the experiences described by Tesla. So we'll proceed to the next slide. Now, Nikola Tesla, in his personal narratives, had reported experiencing intense flashes of light and visions, which he sometimes described as the air around me filled with tongues of living flame. Now, he was raised in an Eastern Orthodox devout family. His father was a priest, and his mother was an inventor. But he described the air around me filled with tongues of living flame. These were often involuntary sensory phenomena that he experienced from a young age, particularly preceding periods of intense creativity or mental exertion. Biographers and those who have studied Tesla's life often attribute these experiences to his unique neurological makeup, possibly a form of synesthesia, where people taste colors, sounds, have odors, or a manifestation of his intense visualization abilities. These tongues of living flame were a personal internal experience tied to his individual consciousness and thought processes. Anyone familiar with Tesla's life's work knows that he often had mental prototypes of devices, experimental apparati, before actually going in the lab and building them. He was even able to rotate them 360 degrees in his unusual mind. Now, some people are overwhelmed with mental imagery, and others are somewhat or surprisingly devoid of mental imagery. Now, in contrast, the tongues of fire, according to AI Gemini, described in the New Testament, Acts 2, 1 through 4, are presented as a miraculous event that occurred on the day of Pentecost. This was a shared experience among the disciples of Jesus, where divided tongues as of fire appeared to them and rested on each one of them. This phenomenon was accompanied by the sound of a rushing wind and the disciples being filled with the Holy Spirit, enabling them to speak in other languages. The biblical narrative portrays this as an external divine manifestation signifying the pouring out of the Holy Spirit upon the early Christian community, empowering them for their mission. Now, key differences highlight the lack of a direct connection between Tesla's experience and those reported in the New Testament. Nature of the experience. Tesla's tongues of living flame were internal visual or sensory experiences, while the Pentecostal tongues of fire were a visible phenomenon observed by multiple people. Source. Tesla's experiences are generally understood as neurological or psychological phenomena unique to him, while the Pentecost event is attributed to a divine act, the coming of the Holy Spirit. Context and significance. Tesla's tongues of living flame were linked to his personal creative and cognitive processes. The Pentecost tongues of fire were a foundational event for the Christian church, symbolizing the empowerment and presence of the Holy Spirit among believers. Now, of course, I'm not a biblical scholar or a professor of theology or comparative religions. For example, the Muslim people do not really ever mention a Holy Spirit. That is considered divine energy directly from Allah. But many Christian sects would associate the Holy Spirit with a gift of creativity, which Tesla certainly had. Now, shared versus individual. The Pentecost experience was shared by a group, whereas Tesla's visions, as I mentioned, were personal and internal. While both descriptions use similar fiery imagery, the term tongues of fire in a religious context has a specific symbolic meaning related to divine presence, purification, and empowerment, particularly associated with the Holy Spirit in Christianity. Tesla's use of the phrase appears to be a descriptive metaphor for his intense visual hallucinations. Now, I personally am not so sure of this AI interpretation. Therefore, despite the superficial similarity in wording, the reported tongues of living flame by Nikola Tesla and the New Testament's tongues of fire at Pentecost are distinct phenomena arising from entirely different contexts and with different perceived origins and meanings. There is no evidence to suggest a historical or theological connection between the two. Now, as I've mentioned, the above position is one established by AI Gemini via Google. It may be worth your while to consider reading author Robert Temple's book on the subject of plasma bodies. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.